Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I always feel a little sheepish when I'm talking about human behavior. That's because it so varies on the people, it so varies on the circumstances, and making it even more difficult to talk about behavior or make recommendations. Our predispositions change over time. And I'm doubly sheepish about talking about relationships because all that doubles because of the two people, and the permutations of each factor mushroom. That said, for me to ignore relationships when I'm always giving this practical advice about the key elements of life would be remiss. So I periodically wade into the muck. For example, I certainly have written articles and probably YouTubes with these titles, and you might search on YouTube with the name Nemko and these article titles or video titles. The Relationship Report Card, Refreshing a Stale Relationship, Relationships in 2019 and Beyond, Later Relationships, that is, relationships later in life, and the World's Shortest Parenting Course. Well, today, I'd like to take a shot at helping you decide what I call your non-negotiables, your nice-to-haves, and your not-importance regarding your relationships, platonic or romantic. And then I'll offer some thoughts on addressing relationship problems. I'd like you to put 2 check marks. I want you to write each of these factors down and put 2 check marks next to those you consider non-negotiable. 1 check mark next to things that would be nice to have in that relationship, and leave the others blank. The first one is trust. That is, a person you can pretty much trust, for example, to keep secrets secret. And crucially, someone you can count on to act in your interest, and certainly not against your interest. Next, no psychological or physical abuse. That's a subset of the previous item, trust, but it's important enough for me to mention it separately. Kindness. Is the person generally benevolent, not just toward you, but in general? Intelligence. That's critical, because thinking ability affects every utterance, every discussion, every decision. You probably don't want a relationship with someone whose reasoning ability is light years ahead of yours, but it's wise to give brownie points to brains that are a notch above yours. Compatible interests. This is often overrated. In some excellent friendships and romances, the parties have quite different interests, and their relationship is based not so much on their interests, but on the conversations, maybe on their sexual relationship, and on small areas of overlapping interests. And they may be very small. For example, my wife loves travel. She loves dancing. I like neither. I like writing. I like gardening. She likes neither. But we both enjoy theater, watching movies, inviting people to dinner. So our joint activities reside there, and we pursue our other interests without each other. Next, compatible level of intimacy. Some people like to explore deep personal issues, intellectual issues. Other people prefer a more superficial relationship, chatting about the latest, quote, big game, or their upcoming trip to Costa Rica, that cool band, or their kids' amazing accomplishments. Next, compatible time demands. Do the two of you want to spend a similar amount of time together? Compatible complaining levels. If you tend to be a whiner and you need a patient listener, it's fair that you accept that from your friend or partner, that is, their whining or complaining. But if you have little tolerance for that, you better give this item 1 or maybe even 2 check marks. Punctuality. Some people are easygoing about punctuality, while others get quite annoyed when the person says they'll be there at 7 and at 7:10 and crickets. No substance abuse. Few things can devastate a relationship more than substance abuse, and that's doubly true if you too are prone to it. Economic compatibility. Do you want your friend or partner to be economically self-sufficient, or at least not hitting you up for money? Sexual compatibility. Sex is a romantic relationship's bonding glue. Besides, it's fun. Intractable sex problems rarely arise, though, from poor communication, which usually is fixable, but usually because of 2 differing sex drives. Now let's turn to problems. Of course, relationships have disagreements, breakups. The first dilemma is whether you should talk about the problem, let it ride, cut back, or end the relationship. And the answer lies in your answer to 2 questions. 1. How likely will a conversation or 2 sufficiently improve the situation? And the second question is, what's the opportunity cost? if you cut back or drop this relationship, what would, not could, what would you be doing with the time and energy? Now, let's assume, though, you want to talk about the problem. Of course, the specifics vary with the people and the problem, but here's one sample dialogue that may embed a useful lesson or two. Person 1 says, I think you know I get pretty annoyed at lack of punctuality. The lesson embedded in that is, rather than the accusatory, you're always late, person 1 made an I statement. That boosts the chances that person 2 will respond open-mindedly. Person 2 responds, oh, that's just one of my weaknesses. I try to be on time, but I lose track of time, or I underestimate how long something's going to take. Person 1 responds, as you know, there are an infinite number of things that can make something take longer than the minimum. Do you build in a cushion? The lesson there is, person 1 didn't give any long lecture, just one sentence on a not obvious fact, or stating a non-obvious fact, and then followed that with a question. Person 2 responded, usually I do leave a cushion, but I guess I really value trying to cram in as much as I can, so I don't leave much of a cushion. The lesson there is that person 1's having raised the concern with a light hand facilitated person 2 being self-reflective. Person 1 then says, I guess the question is whether you feel that's worth making me wait. I must admit it kind of makes me feel unvalued. The lesson there is person 1 framed the dilemma accurately but briefly, and again as an I statement. Person 2 responded, but your insisting on promptness is devaluing my valuing of being relaxed about time. It's just not that important to be prompt. Person 1 responds, so do we need to compromise here? You'll try a little harder to be on time and I'll try to be more forgiving when you're not? Person says, I guess it's worth a try. The lesson there is that the perfect is the enemy of the good. It would be unrealistic to expect person 2 to make an unbridled promise to be prompt in the future. An agreement to mutually try a compromise is progress. While some people prefer a largely solo life, and you might want to see my article, The Recluse Option, most people do prefer a life suffused with, or at least peppered with, relationships. And I hope this little talks what I call doables, practicalities, practical things that most people can do. I hope this little talks doables will help you make the most of your relationships. This is a part of a series on doables, which I call Baby Steps to a Better Life, and you can find those on my YouTube channel or in text on my Psychology Today blog, which is How to Do Life. In any event, I do thank you for watching. My name is Marty Nemko. I feel free to give this a thumbs up, or if needed, a thumbs down. Your comment, you're hitting the share button and sharing on your social media, and or subscribing to my YouTube channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.